Good evening, all. All right, okay, we've got 19 people here so far. Good evening, all. Are we ready to start? Is it 6?
No, 4 minutes.
Oh, 4 minutes. Be great to know where you're all from, because you can see us, but we can't see you. So you want to give us an introduction? Is there a sideline here where they can let us know things? Sorry, Rob and I are the least technical people when it comes to this sort of thing.
I've got another London person.
All right, Shu from London, which is great. Who else have we got? Starting to come in now. Nice to meet you too. It's excruciating, this bit. Oh, Jonathan from Singapore, Sarah from Edinburgh, Sarah from the Wirral.
Oh, you do get people from all over the place, don't you, Zita?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wonder what time it is in Singapore.
It's going to be late or very early in the morning. Oh, Isabel's from London as well.
Oh, brilliant.
1 a.m. 1 a.m. in Singapore, everyone.
Oh my goodness. I hope it was worth waiting up for.
Definitely
no pressure.
Definitely will be. Zita and I have known each other for years, so yeah, hopefully we'll share all of our wonderful insights with you all. Zita certainly will, and whatever you need to know about embryology, hopefully I'll be able to answer.
We look very dark on these screens, don't we? Is that, you see? Look very dark.
You need a big lamp behind.
I'm sure we're almost ready to go now, aren't we? 2 minutes.
Great.
Okay. Be great if you can sort of chat as we go along and ask questions, because then there will be time at the end for questions. But it's, happy to sort of take some as we're going along as well. Just waiting for the 2 minutes to come up.
Yeah, they'll all be rolling now.
That's not too soon, otherwise we're going to miss lots of people.
Yeah, it's true. That's true.
They won't know who you are. For all those who are just joining, if you want to ask anything before we start, do feel free to put a comment in the chat box. But not
No. That's the last thing that we need to have.
Make everyone sleepy.
Yeah, it's very. You want to do it?
We're going to speak about now.
I'll do it.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, yes, that's perfect.
It's just being recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is being recorded.
Oh, we're ready to start. Let's go.
I minimize this chat. Oh, got the drawing pen.
Okay. So hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and I hope you will get something from this. And we're going to be talking about boosting egg quality and what makes IVF success. And I've known Rob for a long time as an embryologist. He's now a clinical director at Aria. I'm a midwife, and I've been doing this for the last 40 years and still really enjoying doing what I'm doing.
Great. So yeah, I got to know you when you were running the Zita West clinic and we were working together, and this is why I really learned so much more about IVF than just the science, and nutrition became a huge aspect that I learned from you. Yeah. But I don't proclaim to be an expert in nutrition. That's why you're here. I'm great with sperm and eggs.
Okay, on to the next slide. Well, you know all about me. I'm a midwife, I'm an acupuncturist, and I really am passionate about women's health and men's health, but also looking at mindset and having a holistic approach. And that's what I've always believed in. And I was interested in the holistic approach when I started the clinic 20 years ago. And I was considered a bit of a fruitcake at times, wasn't I? Because nobody believed, there was no evidence that nutrition worked. There was no evidence that acupuncture worked. There was no evidence that hypnotherapy worked. And yet it was what women wanted. They felt so much better when they were getting all of these treatments as well. So I got through it all, and now it's amazing. I was just talking to Rob earlier, how much information is out there. Some of it is good, but others, it's just, the social media is full of information, and it's not always the correct information. So on to you, Rob.
Absolutely. So I'm Rob. Started off in embryology over 20 years ago. Worked my way up from the eggs and sperm into leading laboratories in London, and now I found myself leading the whole clinic. So I'm the clinic director of clinics, now 3 years old, here in Marylebone, called Aria. And really, what we try to do is what you were doing back 20 years ago, and really promoting that individualized care from patients, listening to them, giving them the treatment exactly as they want it to be, not just all the high-tech medicine that goes into it, but just listening to what other parts, the holistic alternative or complementary therapies, recommending them to the patients with the partners that we work with, ensuring that the patients really do have that really all-round fulfilled experience of coming through for a fertility treatment, whatever that may be.
Okay. So, the hardest thing I think for so many couples that I see is, what are your options? I mean, you start off, don't you, really excited about trying for a baby. Then you have to wait this mythical year till you go to your GP, and then your GP will give you 10 minutes and say, go away and relax. It's going to happen. And that isn't the case. I don't believe that everybody needs IVF. I think that you should have a conversation beforehand to find out everything they're doing that might stop them from having IVF. I know that's not the right way to think when you've got an IVF clinic, but I always felt that. My plan A was to get somebody pregnant naturally, and plan B was going down a route of IVF. So your options, and I think you'd agree with this, are based on two things for me. It's your age and time trying. And sadly, the older you are, if you've met somebody late in life at 38 or 39, I would usually give you 3 or 4 months to try, but you're looking at an IVF route because you've got to look at where the most success is. But it is like a maze. And, so many women will say to me, I wish I'd done this earlier. I wish I hadn't left it too late, because there's lots of dead ends you go down before you get what you feel you're on the right path.
I totally agree with you. And this is part of your practice that has been for a very long time. Complete those very simple investigations at the start, your AMH, your antral follicle count. If all of that looks healthy, then start exploring some other options before moving straight into IVF. So look at all the nutritional aspects. And this is where the consultations you do with your clients are so wonderful, that you really do delve more into the history of the patients rather than just the medical side that we look at, to help people make a decision on what the next
because a lot of the clients I see, they're stuck. When I ask a client what do they need or what do they want, it's like, I want clarity, I want support, I want to know what the next steps are, I want to know what to do next. And I don't think the IVF world do enough for the mindset before you start. And preparation is absolutely key for me, because you prepare for every major event in life. And IVF is a major event as far as I'm concerned. So, like, the challenges that women and couples go through is it's difficult, isn't it?
It's very hard. And there's a huge emotional side to this as well, which this is a challenge. This isn't something you want to be doing as a family, going into a fertility clinic. And some people want to start off really back at the basics again, and no one wants to be in a fertility clinic having an IVF cycle. So if there's more you can do from the natural holistic aspect, and that's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And your life is on hold as well, isn't it, Rob? You're just in it and nothing else is happening. And I think that fertility robs you of your confidence, your courage, and your creativity. And you know, this is the journey. And one of the things I always try to get through to women, especially some of the younger women that come along at 33, 34, and they want an AMH test doing, which is an egg reserve test. And the question they always ask me is, how long have I got? And it's, you can't answer that question. You know, you can't say at 34 because your AMH is good, you've got 3 years, 4 years. Nobody knows. But this journey and this path, that's why I've included it, is trying to sort of get through that. It's managing expectations. You know, on average, it takes 8 to 12 months to get pregnant. A lot of women today have been on the pill for 15 or 16 years. They come off the pill and they want it to happen straight away. So you can imagine if you're 34, it takes you a year to get pregnant. A miscarriage is very common to begin with. You've got to pick yourself up. You've got to start again. You've got to go down a route of IVF maybe. And it's not always successful that first time round. You know, so you can see how you can go from 34 to 37 very quickly. So I always try and encourage women to be strategic about what they're doing, you know, to think outside the box and to look ahead.
It's a very common question that we receive is, what are my chances of getting pregnant first time? And it's you can go onto websites, you can read all different clinic success rates, but that's for a mean, that's for a large population of patients of different all different backgrounds, different infertilities, and it's impossible to give someone an absolute figure for what their individual success rate is. And this is where all the investigation comes in, looking more into the history to really give someone a great understanding of what their chances of success will be, and try and narrow this 12 to 18 months down to as short as possible, and get someone onto the right treatment pathway straight away, which isn't always that easy. And that's where the IVF science can sometimes be a bit of a learning process itself. And how successful was that IUI? What was the response? Should you do that again? Should you move on to IVF? And this is all what we do in the clinics to really try and bring that time to conception down as short as to such a short window as possible. Yeah, no, absolutely. So, you know, strategies, I was talking about strategies. Age, for me, it's age and time trying. And again, how many failed cycles have you had? Because the more failed cycles you've had, it doesn't sort of bode great for the future. But having said that, you know, a lot of women will turn around to me and say, I failed. It was my fault. I failed. And very often it can be the protocol you're on. It can be the lab. There's all sorts of things. There's all sorts of reasons for IVF not working. Age being the biggest factor. And it's trying to identify what the reason for that failure was. You're quite right. Age is absolutely the main reason, depending on how old you are, of course. If you're young and having multiple failed cycles, there's going to be something else in that equation as what isn't quite giving the correct answer. But that's what we're doing in the clinic. Trying to find the reason why the cycles have failed is fundamental. And if you lose confidence in your doctor or the team around you, then don't be afraid to change clinics. Yeah, I think, and when people don't know they can move embryos and everything as well, can't they? Second opinion is really important. But just going back to the age factor again is, you know, if you're older and you've got a good AMH, you stand a better chance because you've got more eggs, even though a lot of them will be chromosomally abnormal. With testing now, you do stand a better chance. And if you're younger with a low AMH, you still stand a good chance because those eggs are chromosomally normal. They're going to be healthier. And that's just basic natural science. That the older you get, the eggs are growing older with you, and the more of those that are going to have genetic problems. But if you've got a low AMH, which means you're producing 10, maybe even in some cases to 20 eggs, that really does increase your chances of finding that magical healthy egg, the one with the normal chromosomal number that will give you that baby. No, absolutely. And male factor is definitely 50-50 now, you know, in terms of what's going on. And there's the male factor can be very simply treated from the IVF perspective. You can't do a whole lot. Sometimes it's where you can talk about the nutritional side, Zita. But from the scientific side, if the sperm count is low, if there are problems there with DNA fragmentation, there's lots we can do in the laboratories to we'll come on to talk about that. It's a good, basically it's a numbers game. With AMH, the higher the number, the better.
And that's as far as you can go, you know.
It varies all throughout age groups as well. When you're younger, you should have a higher AMH. As you get older, that AMH will naturally decline as the ovaries, the ovarian reserve begins to diminish. But there's outliers all in there, so we can talk about what's normal. But gosh, there's so many different categories to what a normal is.
And remember, this is just one marker. You know, it doesn't tell you whether you're ovulating. It doesn't tell you what your thyroid is. It doesn't tell you, you know, anything else. But it's a good marker along with an ultrasound scan. So options. So again, you know, you're trying for a while. You try for a year, nothing's happened. 18 months, nothing happened. What do you do next? Do you go on straight to IVF, or do you do ovulation induction, IUI, etc.?
Yeah, I've got a very strong opinion on this.
Yeah, I probably do as well.
For me, this comes down to the team around you. Okay, you can go into a clinic, you can have an initial consultation, you can get told all of these 7 different options and what they might be. Frozen embryo transfer is slightly different. And the doctor will say, we could do this, we could do that, we could do this. Now, I believe that a really highly skilled doctor will say, right, option 3 or option 4 is what you need to do. Let's not think about this too much more. If we've investigated absolutely everything, go straight to the treatment that's going to give you the highest chance.
Yeah.
Because you could spend a long time, everyone could spend it, if the sperm quality is good, the AMH is good, you could spend a long time doing ovulation induction. You may get pregnant. Then the question is, well, why aren't you getting pregnant naturally if we haven't been able to identify something? And then same with going to IUI, a little bit more advanced in ovulation induction, or should you be going straight to IVF? Or if your AMH is incredibly low and you are over sort of in your mid-40s, maybe egg donation is something to consider.
I mean, I feel the same, but like with ovulation induction, for some of those women that are younger, that have been on the pill and their periods haven't come back and everything else, okay, that's a good starter.
Absolutely.
With the IUI, again, you know, if somebody's older, the success rates in IUI are very low. And I would rather see them go down an IVF route first than lose 6 months doing that. Yeah. And then we've got ICSI. Well, you know, IVF and ICSI sort of go together. It's dependent on the sperm. In a bit. Frozen embryo transfers are done very, very often now in terms of IVF. And then there's egg and sperm donation if you're older and it's not happening for you. And it doesn't necessarily follow this order, does it? You know, it's sort of like it's laid out here as if it's really simple, but it's not. There's a lot of thought that goes into this, and there's a lot of things that you need to think about. Okay. So with an IVF cycle, there are lots of different protocols, aren't there? And I think a lot of women will come and they will, a bit like me at my age, anything that's natural, I'm drawn towards, you know, in terms of skin cream or whatever. And it's the same with IVF, you know.
Sure, when you said that, I thought, I hope Zita's not going to ask me now to list all the different protocols, because I'd be here all night.
No. So all I'm saying is that, you know, women will come along and they will say, right, I want natural IVF, I want soft IVF, I want light IVF, I want this IVF. But IVF has to be appropriate to them and what's going on for them, you know. So you again, the doctors are looking at the greatest success, aren't they?
Being a scientist, and all my other scientist colleagues hate it when I say this, but what we do in the lab is very standardized now between all of the clinics. I genuinely believe the magic is in this part. It's the stimulation protocol to really get the very best eggs from the ovary. And this is where the genuine skill of each consultant it really does lie. And finding that right combination of medications for someone to get the best outcome, the best quality eggs, is for me fundamentally important. As an embryologist, if I'm given good eggs, I can make a beautiful embryo that's hopefully going to create a pregnancy. But if you get poor eggs to start off with, it's a far greater challenge for an embryologist to create that embryo that will hopefully make a baby for a family.
I'm going to talk about nutrition as we go on. So this is frozen embryo transfers that we were asked a lot about last time. And just talk a little bit about that, because this has been sort of like quite recent in the last couple of years, isn't it? That before it was always standard that you did IVF, you collected the embryos, fertilized, they put back in. Frozen embryo transfer means that they're put back on a a natural cycle.
in a natural cycle.
Yeah.
And
the success rates are really good.
the reason for that is because we're doing so much more genetic testing of embryos. Really, if we've got a group, say, of 10 embryos and you're in your mid-30s, you would expect around 60% of those to be chromosomally healthy. So we're trying to identify which of those embryos are healthy from the outset, but then compare that to women in their early 40s, you're expecting about 10 to 20% of those embryos to be normal. So if you've got 10 of those, you need to find which one has the normal set of chromosomes straight away. You have to freeze the embryos once you've started the genetic screening process.
Yeah.
So putting back embryos in a frozen cycle is now far more common, especially in Aria, than actually putting back an embryo in a fresh cycle.
Yeah. And also the advantages are as well is that if you hyperstimulate, if you get a lot of eggs, it's great to be able to give the body a rest before you put them back, and it's not as intensive, is it?
If on the body, it's nowhere near as invasive or extensive as it can be, taking those 12, 14 days of medications every day, then undergoing an egg collection procedure as well, getting your body to recover. So 5 days later, you're going to have an embryo put back. It is super stressful. And also the embryologist is contacting you every day, giving you good news, bad news. Gosh, the emotional roller coaster you go on for an
up, down, up, down,
it's enormous.
Yeah.
And that's not just physically, but the emotional side. So once you have an embryo frozen, you know what quality it is, whether it's got a normal set of chromosomes or not, and you can have it done in a natural cycle or just using a slightly medicated cycle, then for the body, it can only be the best thing to do. In the States, almost 99% of all embryo transfers that are done over there are done in the frozen cycle.
And so what if somebody asks, which we do get asked, is it better to have a frozen embryo transfer or a fresh embryo transfer?
Well, it really does depend on the reasons for what you're doing. If you're young, you've got a good AMH, and you've got a good chance that an embryologist is going to pick the nice, healthy, chromosomally normal embryo. Having an embryo put back in the fresh cycle is absolutely the right thing to do. If you're doing the genetic screening, you haven't got a choice. The embryos have to be frozen. And then the argument for those patients who are in that sort of early mid-40 category is sometimes you'll only collect maybe 5 eggs, and if only 1 or 2 fertilize, then what do you want to do? Do you want us to screen them and tell you if they're normal or not, or do you just want nature to decide if that embryo is going to implant or not? Bit more of a decision really to make for those.
But sometimes for those women as well, they need more than one cycle to get a good collection of eggs, you know, to make it more viable. Yeah, which is expensive as well. Okay, so preparing women for fertility treatments, I'm a huge advocate in mindset, getting the best eggs and sperm that you can, building up energy reserves, getting through these hurdles, and preparation for about 4 to 6 weeks. And mindset is so important because, you know, when you first start off doing IVF, you know, you're on a bit of a high, but when it comes to cycle 5 or cycle 6, you get into this real depressed curve. And it drives me mad when I open social media and I see people telling women to get into their groove and step into this and that and the other. You cannot motivate yourself if you've not got the right mindset. You know, you're down in the dumps somewhere. So a lot of the work I do is around mindset. Yeah. And I know clinics offer counselling, but counselling is slightly different.
It's totally different.
Looking, because, you know, again, you set yourself up to fail, and you've got to sort of like get through that. The egg and sperm I'm passionate about, and one of the questions that was always asked years ago when I first started, before I had an IVF clinic, I'd be sending people to have IVF, and they'd ask their doctors, "Oh, can nutrition help or acupuncture?" No evidence to show. But we now know. You know, you talk about if you get a beautiful embryo, you know, as an embryologist, you get that raw material.
Yeah.
And that raw material is dependent on somebody's lifestyle, the supplements they've taken, the nutrients they've taken. And for me, it's all about energy. You know, when you think of the energy is required to grow an egg, you know, the hormones need to be there in the right place at the right time. The gut needs to be good to be able to absorb the nutrients. You go along, you've got to ovulate an egg, a mature egg, not an immature egg. You've got to fertilize it, it turns into an embryo, it's got to divide. It needs energy. And
it's not an immediate process.
No.
Producing an egg or a sperm cell, it's not just one cycle, one menstrual cycle. It takes three months
Yeah.
for the early precursor cells to develop to stage where they're going to develop rather into an immature egg, and then go through the process of follicular genesis. That's the egg developing to a stage where it's going to be a mature one. And that environment that egg is developing, if that is optimized with a beautiful nutrition,
Yeah.
well, it's got nutrition all around it, then quality is going to be there. That's
Yeah.
why it just makes perfect sense.
Well, it does. Like for me, fertility is a whole body event. It's not just something that happens in the fallopian tube. So every system has its contribution towards the egg,
Yeah.
you know. So the brain and stress and hormones are going to increase cortisol and adrenaline, which are damaging to eggs. If you are working late, drinking lots of alcohol, eating processed food, not sleeping, a bit like you, Rob, you're going to deplete the body of vital nutrients that are needed. So it is really important, that preparation phase, as you say. And the couples that come along to me, sometimes they just want to keep going at it, and it's like, no, you've got to have a break. We've got to lay a foundation down now before you start again. But we're talking about that as we go along. So, you know, the key areas for me are mindset, looking at eggs, exercise, you know, everything that is going to sort of build your energy up. Whole body connections I've talked about. I will talk about the heart, because these connections are, we know about neuroscience and ancient wisdom. We know that there's more than one brain in the body. Like the heart is like a brain, it can hold memories. When I ask a woman about her heart when she's going through this, and I talk to women every day about their heart and their wombs, it's always the language that's used, the cognitive language. How does your heart feel? I'm heartbroken, heartache, heavy-hearted, you know. And the heart now is really key, because it's about connection. And so many women I see, they've lost their spark, they've lost their connection with everything around them. And I encourage visualizations. You know, I think that they are really, really important in this. It's the same with the gut. You know, the gut microbiome now and the vaginal microbiome are increasingly important.
Yeah.
And if your diet isn't great, if you have got irritable bowel, diarrhea, constipation, you're not able to absorb the nutrients needed to build those eggs and sperm. And, you know, when you think about women going through IVF, it's not one egg. You know, you need a good quality, you need a good crop of eggs. So, you know, everything is, energy becomes more and more important with IVF.
Wow. I love listening to you speak about this.
So again, you know, it's looking at the whole thing, your thoughts, your emotions, your energy, everything is going towards making healthy eggs and healthy sperm.
Totally agree.
So here with your slide now.
We're in the laboratory now.
Yeah, back in the laboratory.
So here we are. I wish I had a little pointer. So in that video on the right-hand side, just off center to sort of 2 o'clock is a human egg just sitting there, surrounded by thousands of cells. And if you look into the background, maybe look up in that top left-hand corner, you can see the little sperm whizzing around. So what's going on there is we've collected an egg from the female partner, and we've collected the sperm from the chap, and we've prepared them both, and now we've mixed the two together. That's IVF, which basically means fertilization outside of the body. So that's why we call this conventional IVF. To do this, you need to have good sperm count. Nothing there which would give us any concern that there was to be a problem with fertilization. If you've had a history of previous fertilization, maybe had a pregnancy that ended early, that's a really positive sign. It means that fertilization is taking place. Really important. You give a really good medical history when your doctors are asking.
So if somebody has had soft IVF or light IVF or whatever, would that screen look different or not necessarily?
No, exactly.
Okay.
Oh, on the neck, do we skip a slide, or is it straight on to?
Yeah.
Okay. So what have we got here? So it looks like a very nice sperm sample. Like you've got a sperm there with 2 tails whizzing around in circles. That's perfectly normal, by the way. You expect well, what is? Let's start. What's a healthy semen sample look at? Well, it's got to have lots of sperm in it. We expect there to be, well, we need there to be over 16 million sperm per mil of semen that's produced. So huge amounts of sperm. The motility just refers to the sperm that are moving and the way they're moving. You want to see at least, I would say, at least 40% of the sperm moving quite nicely. Morphology, well, because you're producing so many millions of sperm, you expect the large majority of those sperm, the body's mass produced, to be abnormal. So you would like about 4% of the sperm there to be nice and healthy. DNA fragmentation is something that we look at if we're seeing poor embryo quality or we're getting poor fertilization.
Explain what DNA frag is to people. I mean, sure they know.
It's looking for the instance of breaks in the genetic material in the sperm. It's quite normal to have a level of DNA fragmentation within the sperm, but when that gets to a very high level, that's associated with poor embryo quality, lower success rates. Absolutely,
Yeah.
and that's what you need to be looking at. It's not the first test you would go straight to do, but it's certainly one that's in our toolbox as the fertility professionals that we'd recommend to a family if we had concerns that we think there may be an issue with the quality of DNA fragmentation within the.
And somebody with poor sperm would have ICSI, so you would choose one sperm.
Yeah.
How do you choose that one sperm?
It's a very highly skilled embryologist like myself to be able to do that. So I couldn't possibly tell you. It's
but is it not done? You know, like what are the advances with AI and all of this?
This is where the likes of myself are being made redundant, because now we can use tracking software which not only looks at the way a sperm looks. So in my day, when I was in the laboratory, what we'd be looking at is the head of the sperm, the two different hemispheres of the sperm's head, its neck or the mid piece, and its tail, and the way it's moving. Now with the overlays of AI, the computers can monitor every single sperm on a screen. So in this screenshot we've got here, and tell us which one is moving absolutely perfectly, and essentially which one you put back. You need to still make sure that the sperm looks morphologically sound or of very good quality. But once you've got that, there you go. You can be putting back a sperm.
Is that increasing pregnancy rates?
Certainly increasing fertilization rates, embryo quality. Couldn't answer the question on success rates at the moment. That's still under study at the moment.
Oh, that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the advances of the technologies in the lab. It's probably more digital with all the cameras we've got in there. Different AI companies constantly looking for different aspects of the laboratory that they can look into. We can take it back a step. Well, maybe we'll at the end. We'll go back and look at the whole stimulation side of IVF treatments and how AI is having an impact on that.
Yeah.
Okie doke. So now we're going on. Now we know we've got a not such an optimal sperm quality, or there's been a problem with fertilization in the past. We're doing ICSI to fertilize this egg. So this is the method, as you were just talking about, where we have picked up the sperm in the microscope. It's just in the tip of that needle that's being, you can see the sperm just coming into the center of the egg now, and then it's being deposited and left inside the egg. So it's over there at 9 o'clock, right at the tip. So that egg is ready to be incubated now for another 24 hours, and then the embryologist will come back in the morning to see if that one is fertilized. It looks so beautiful, that injection. It was clearly mine that it would have done. Yeah, that's going to fertilize. But this is the method we use for overcoming the obstacles and the boundaries to fertilization using IVF. Very simple. This is done under sort of 300 times magnification. That egg sitting there is a quarter size of a grain of sand, and it's using very high microscopy and these micro injection tools to make sure we can pick a good sperm and then deposit it directly into the center of the egg. So we're going to talk about maybe IMSI now.
Yeah, is that on there? Yeah.
Just maybe just to very briefly talk on IMSI. So IMSI is just another take on ICSI, where we're just using very high microscopy to zoom into the sperm and look for these microvacuoles inside the sperm head, which is associated with DNA fragmentation. So by doing that, essentially what we're trying to do is pick the very best quality sperm. That's another test that isn't done routinely. It'll be discussed with you if you've had a DNA fragmentation test that's come out very high, or there's been a problem with embryo quality or fertilization in the past.
Okay. So we're talking about microbiomes earlier on, and I'm really sort of excited about this, the last sort of couple of years, vaginal microbiome. And it's quite interesting, you know, with my background in nutrition and supplements, it's all coming together now, and doctors are starting to believe in some of this. And so with the vaginal microbiome, you know, what's incredible is that the research is done now to show that it can help with implantation, you know, and pregnancy success rates. And lactobacillus is for the vagina, but there's also a sperm microbiome as well.
Oh.
Yeah, so which helps with motility. So all of these things are coming into their own.
And
So
what does it take to improve your microbiome?
well,
anything to do-
lactobacillus.
Right.
And you know, the fact is that we know all about the gut microbiome, but they're all like little ecosystems, and they've all got their specific strains of probiotics that are going to help. And with the lactobacillus, it can help with recurrent thrush, urinary infections, etc. So we get a lot of our women on this in the lead up to IVF.
Well, this is one of the things that you were talking about 20 years ago.
Yeah, I know,
I thought you were
absolutely.
total bonkers.
Yeah, we still do. But you know, what's like for me as well, the way I you know explain this diagram to clients, put my glasses on because I can't see, is it is about a whole body event, and it is about making the you know the outcome is healthy eggs and healthy sperm. And when we saw that lovely diagram a few diagrams back, and you could see the you know the egg, and you could see the cumulus around it and the follicular fluid which nourishes the egg. So the egg cell is 550 times bigger than the sperm. It has different components that require different nutrients. So we know that the cell membrane is very important for omega-3, DHA, because those cell membranes need to be really flexible to allow nutrients in and out of the cell. And then you've got the mitochondria of the cell, which is the powerhouse, the energy house, and the energy that is required to divide and divide and divide. And you think with IVF, when you've got, you know, 8 eggs, 7 eggs, whatever, needs a hell of a lot of energy to carry that on. Absolutely. And then you've got the nucleus, which folate is important for. And then you've got the follicular fluid, which surrounds the egg. So vitamin D and inositol are really helpful for that. But it's looking again at your diet and, you know, making sure you're taking adequate amounts of protein. IVF isn't a natural process. You're not producing one egg, you've got to produce a lot. So you need a lot more protein in your diet.
So how does someone know if they're undernourished for any of these different?
Well, they sort of like protein is measured basically very much on your weight and how much you should take. But there are specific measurements for IVF that we give for women to take extra protein. And again, with the diet, it's a Mediterranean diet, which is good. It's had the studies done on it. But it's just trying to sort of like help people understand that it's not just about the eggs and the sperm, it's the whole body, and it's looking at absolutely everything, your stress levels, your lifestyle, your energy levels. And it's exactly the same for the sperm. I mean, the sperm, men are fortunate they're producing sperm 24/7. But the sperm, there's so many of them, and I'm always gobsmacked that, you know, 16 or 17 million sperm or even higher, that there's only 4% is considered normal. And that marker has only been in the last 5 years, because before it was 14%, wasn't it?
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
Was that?
Yeah, I think so. So now, you know, but you know, the what's so difficult with men, I find it's so hard to get them to take a supplement.
Right.
Women will go out and they will absolutely. Do you take supplements, Rob?
No.
Oh, women go out and they will buy absolutely every vitamin, mineral, and everything going. They really will. Trying to get their man to take a supplement is really, really difficult. And you know, when you think that, why are you laughing?
I don't have a woman in my life.
Oh, right, okay. The thing is that the sperm, you know, the most important job, it's like the crown jewels. The most important job that sperm has is to deliver the DNA. And if there's sort of like free radical damage, oxidative stress, etc., it's, you know, it's not great. And I think that so many doctors always say, well, you just need one sperm. It's not just having one sperm, it's the quality of that sperm that you can't see under the microscope. So nutrition is really important.
Absolutely.
And a sperm needs exactly what an egg needs. It needs omega-3 for the cell membranes. It needs coenzyme Q10, ubiquinol for the mitochondria to be able to swim. So yeah, exactly as the vitamin D, there's receptors on sperm and eggs. So vitamin D levels need to be adequate. So, it's getting across how important these nutrients are.
There's so much more you can
Yeah.
do to improve
Yeah.
that quality of the sperm, and considering the job it's got to do, it is
Yeah,
remarkable.
It is, absolutely. So egg health, I've written down here. I won't lay on this, but these are what we sort of say that you need for egg health. Sometimes higher ubiquinol that we use, but they're all really, really important. And it's important that folate is taken, not folic acid. Folate is more easily absorbed by the body. It's the same with sperm, the probiotics, zinc, omega-3, folate, vitamin D, antioxidants, anything you can do. And, you think as well that if you're not taking supplements and you're working hard and you're not sleeping and your diet is poor, you're depleting the body of some of these vital nutrients that are needed. So embryos developing.
Yeah, back into
the lab.
Back into my little area. So let's press play on this video and we'll see this embryo developing. So what we've got there is that the egg is now fertilized. So back in video when we're watching the ICSI, we deposited the sperm into the egg. This is what we see the next day. Now we're looking at these two dimples right in the middle of that egg. They're called pronuclei, and essentially what they're indicating to us is the genome of the maternal genome is activated, and the paternal, the one from the male, has activated there. So we're looking for these two little dimples. And then you got the first cell division, and then another one. So we've got a 4-cell embryo there.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Oopsie, sorry, did I skip a bit there? So then it goes into an 8-cell embryo. So we're on about day 3 of development now. Now the blastocyst starts to form. So we're heading across day 4 to day 5 of development, and we're looking for that blastocyst to develop. And what you now have, this is after 5 days of the embryonic development. You've got the first differentiation of the cells that's taking place. So over those,
fascinating, because those cells migrate to become the liver, the lungs, the heart.
This is incredible. So what we're talking about here, team, is everything over at the 9 o'clock side. We've got that big clump, that big mass of cells, which is called the inner cell mass. That's the part of the embryo now that is going to go on to form the fetus. The rest of the cells all around the outside, that little mosaic of tiles around the outside, that goes on to form the placenta and the sac of the pregnancy if this embryo does implant. And you're quite right, Zita, of that clump of the inner cell mass, those cells have just decided they're going to form a part of the baby, but they haven't yet determined which part of the baby they're going to develop into, whether it's going to be an epithelial cell, or a cardiac cell, or a liver cell. It's absolutely remarkable. I absolutely love this part of science. Oh, sorry, let's skip on to the next slide.
Okay, so so that embryo, when it gets to blastocyst, it's it's a critical time for the embryo because it stands a greater chance of implantation, doesn't it, at that point? So what makes a viable embryo? Because we've all seen through the years, you get the best embryos and somebody doesn't get pregnant, and you have scraggy embryos that go on to get pregnant.
Poor quality embryos that don't go any further. There are so many different factors that an embryologist will use to determine how good is this embryo, what sort of quality is it. And we used to look at the number of cells in an embryo. That it's hard to tell when you see pictures of embryos. Usually you just see the very best embryos that people are taking photos of and are really proud of, and you don't get to see those poor quality embryos that are really struggling to actually develop on much further. Do you know, I think science now has almost turned its back on this part in terms of what's the cell number, what's the percentage of fragmentation within the embryo, is there multinucleation, which means has the DNA started dividing but the cells haven't. And they've gone back to the point, or scientists have, just going, well, it doesn't matter. What matters is if the embryo forms a blastocyst or not. So why don't we just let all of the embryos, let's not disturb them, just let them develop all the way to day 5 now. Either the embryos will develop into blastocysts and make a pregnancy, or give a higher chance of forming pregnancy, or they won't form a blastocyst. They won't form blastocysts, and we can say the quality, the environment in which we grow embryos is so optimized. It is very much like the body. So if an embryo isn't going to develop to a blastocyst in the incubator, and we were to put it back in the body a bit earlier, it's likely you're not going to get pregnant. So let us as scientists, we'll hold on to them that bit longer, and we'll see what develops. We can give you then a really good idea of what chances of pregnancy look like. If nothing does develop to blastocyst, that unfortunate news of you not getting pregnant will just be brought forward. We will
so you know, putting an embryo back for some women on day 3 or day 4, you don't do anymore.
Well, if that's all, so yeah, I'll go back on what I just said there, because if that's all you have, I'm quite an advocate of patients putting back embryos. And if there's no selection process to be made, because let's not get anything wrong here. Letting the embryos develop onto blastocysts is a selection tool that we use to pick the very strongest of the embryos to put back. If there is no selection to be made, then we have a conversation. Do you want us to return it to the natural environment slightly sooner? Or shall we just let the embryos complete that challenge that we've set for them in the laboratory and see if they can make it to that blastocyst with us? Then there's a choice to be made. And there's no right or wrong answer there. It varies. The only difficulty we have is if we put back the embryos earlier and no pregnancy does establish itself, and the family comes back to us and said, well, why didn't I get pregnant? The difficulty we have is saying, well, we don't know if the embryos actually made it to the blastocyst stage. That could have been a problem. What do you do about that? Do you try again, or well, I assume you have to if you don't know if the embryos make blastocysts. If the embryos repeatedly don't make blastocysts, then there's another conversation to be had. Right? Why is that happening? Very likely, more often than not, it's going to be a genetic basis as to why the embryos aren't developing to blastocysts.
And what about as well zero fertilization?
Very good question. Now, if you've got 0% fertilization with IVF, that's the sperm naturally binding to the wall of the egg and trying to penetrate it naturally. That's a reason for infertility, where maybe the sperm and egg just don't have the right receptors for them to be able to bind and fertilize naturally. The treatment for that is ICSI. So next cycle, unfortunately, it is very difficult to recover from an IVF failure. There is rescue ICSI being done now in clinics, which in the UK
what is rescue ICSI?
So the day after we've collected the eggs, we look for fertilization. So we try to fertilize the eggs with the sperm using the natural IVF method. If the next morning the eggs are mature, but no fertilization has taken place, and we have just one polar body, so it gets a bit technical now, but we're looking for different indicators within the egg that suggest that something has happened or not. If it looks like to the embryologist that the eggs just haven't fertilized because the sperm hasn't managed to get through into it, we can then do ICSI to try and stage the fertilization, or try and encourage the eggs to fertilize by introducing a sperm directly into it. One for close conversation with the doctors. Some clinics are now doing it routinely. In the States, it's done a lot. In the UK, it's something that's slowly being adapted by the clinics, because the regulator, the HFEA, has now given a position in which we can do it in certain circumstances. But
is it improving fertilization? Too soon.
Also, I'm one of those people that if the egg hasn't fertilized, it's not fertilized for a reason. But sometimes you need to take that sperm factor out and say, right, if it was the sperm and that was the reason for it, let's try and save the cycle. Let's try and do something. This is something we used to do 20 years ago, and now we've kind of gone full circle again, and now we're back doing it again. The only other point you mentioned there was, what do you do if ICSI fails? The question there is, well, why did it fail? Was it an issue with the sperm, or was it an issue with the egg? That is the $1 million question that we then have to look at. Are we going to try, if we're going to try again, do we just use the same eggs and sperm? Do we try and substitute one? Do we try and use a donor sample for the sperm, or do we use a donor egg? Big decisions to be made, always in discussion with the families. And
it just triggered something for me there as well about the DNA sperm fragmentation. One of the good things about doing that test is, for somebody that is just starting, they wouldn't go on to do IVF, they'd go straight to ICSI, wouldn't they? And that saves time and money as well.
Right. So this is what we saw in the time-lapse video earlier. I'll quickly whiz through this. So
Yeah.
this is just the different stages that an embryo develops. So if we start at the top line from left to right, this, as you saw in the time-lapse video, so the embryo starts off after the first cell division or first cleavage. It divides into the embryo first divides into a 2-cell embryo, then a 4-cell embryo, looks like a 6-cell embryo, and then onto an 8-cell embryo. On that far right of the top slide, that's where we've entered what's called day 3 of development. So your egg collection is day 0, fertilization is day 1, day 2 is the next 24 hours, day 3 is the third 24 hours. This is where the metamorphosis happens between day 3 and day 4. All of those cells converge on themselves, and then we go on to the bottom line at the far left. They sort of form this big blob that we call a morula. And then the cells start communicating, the embryo changes its method of metabolism, and then once it's got itself sorted, it starts pumping fluid straight into the middle of that group of cells, and it forms what's called a cavity, which you can just see forming there in the slide and the image to the right. And then as more fluid is pumped into the central cavity of the blastocyst, and the cells keep on replicating through mitosis as the embryo develops. So now we're on to probably about 50 to 80 cells in that middle slide. Then we move down towards the far right-hand 2 images of the blastocyst. There's probably more like 200 to 300 cells in there now, and yeah, forming a beautiful blastocyst there. This slide's just showing the different qualities that we have of embryos. The one on the far left is the textbook image of a grade 1 embryo, and then the fragmentation as the cells divide. If it's not totally efficient, we end up with these fragments. So that embryo on the just the second one on is a grade 2 embryo, and then if the embryo is really struggling to develop, they fragment. They just release these little cells of fluid sacs called fragments, which interferes with the communication between the cells. That's really a sign of poor quality. So these ones we don't expect to reach the blastocyst stage as well as another. But if they do go on to make a blastocyst, they vary in quality as well. We look at the different structures within the blastocyst. We look at the inner cell mass, which in the image is the one on the far left-hand side at the 9 o'clock stage. We grade that depending on the number of cells in there, its cohesiveness, is it tightly packed, and then sometimes it's not. Sometimes the cells, there's only a few little cells kicking around in that inner cell mass, don't look like they're up to much, and we'll grade that, give that a lower grade, maybe a C. So this is how we're really differentiating.
But is AI coming into this as well now?
Right. So now what AI is doing, at the moment, it's not looking at these different cell structures. It's doing something even more. It's looking at the time periods at which the embryo reaches milestones in its development. So what the computers are telling us is if it takes X number of hours for an embryo to go from a day 3 to a day 5 stage, and which parts of the embryo develop at different stages, that's correlated with different success in pregnancy. Wow. So the cameras are now looking at the expansion of the embryos, looking at the time points at which the embryo is reaching those milestones, and now telling the embryologist, this is the one you need to be looking at. We don't give all the credit to the computer. I mean,
yeah, I know, because it's sort of something that you've learned over time.
We work together on it, and just because an embryo reaches certain milestones together, it can still be really poor quality.
Yeah.
So we overrule the algorithms or the AI, the overlaying AI structure on top there to pick which embryos to put back. And then you start, maybe we'll talk about genetic screening a little bit later on.
Yeah.
So this is just more abnormalities, different qualities we're looking at as embryology.
Does the embryo implant after blastocyst?
Very shortly after, once the embryo hatches from its shell. So I don't think we've seen an embryo actually hatching, a blastocyst hatching from any of these images so far. But once it's broken free, so it expands to the point where the shell can't hold it anymore, and it breaks, and then the embryo slips out. Then it's looking for the endometrium to go and bury itself.
And there's a lot of work now being done on the endometrium, isn't there, in terms of IVF and the quality of the endometrium, and some of the tests. Are they still doing Alice and Ether?
Yeah, still doing Emma and Alice, not Aria anymore, which is the implantation window of when you should be putting an embryo back, because that was shown to actually not improve success rates when there was a big study done on that one.
And this is AI in the lab, which we've talked a lot about, actually, haven't we?
Yeah, so work with cytoplasmic flow in eggs. This is for women who want to come and freeze their eggs and really preserve their fertility. The question we always get asked is, are they good quality eggs that you're freezing for us? Because the way, as embryologist Rob, the way we know how good a quality an egg is by fertilizing it, and you see what embryo develops from that. Work is now being done to look at that big grainy sort of what we call the cytoplasm part of the egg. When you follow it on time lapse, it moves, and AI is now looking at the cytoplasmic flow, the way that cytoplasm is moving around.
Because if somebody's freezing their eggs, they're not fertilizing them.
No.
So you're just looking at if something's mature or immature, and you do a lot of egg freezing, and I see increasingly women are doing it now, which I think is a good thing, as long as they've got all the information that they need.
I think the conversation's moved on to a point so far now that this isn't very early stage science of freezing eggs. This is really an established thing that we can do, and also people are becoming far more aware of it and life. And as I get older, my fertility is going to decline. Well, if I'm in my early 30s and I'm not quite at a stage where I want to consider having a child, well, that's the time you need to freeze your eggs, not when you're in your late 30s. And
no, but that sadly, it's so many of the women that come along are 38 and 40, and they don't very often realize that. I mean, how many eggs does it take to make a baby? 23, something like that.
Just one.
Yeah. Oh no, but your chances. The more eggs you get, the better.
Okay.
And not all of them are mature, so sometimes you've got to do 3 or 4 cycles. And again, I've had women in their 20s getting in contact, and they haven't got the money, because it's expensive. It's not done the NHS.
It's I always say it's a two-step process. The investigations, come for a consultation.
Yeah.
Have your AMH tested, have a scan, make sure the ovaries are in the right area, and there's follicular development, there's antral follicles. Once we have that information, then we can really advise you if egg freezing is really an option or not.
Yeah.
And also, if it's not an option, what are your options? What should you be looking at next? And move the conversation on. But at least, and this is what makes me so happy, at least people are doing something about it now. If they are in that situation, and not letting the question of, oh, am I going to have a baby? Am I going to preserve your fertilities until you're in your early 40s?
Yeah.
AMH is so low, then really there is very little option for you.
No, absolutely. We've got another slide here. Okay, so the solution. Can't read that. Oh, right. Okay, so for the clients that I see, and I'm sure you do as well, Rob, I've seen over the years that clients that do really well are those that focus, really build up their energy, and they've got resilience and grit, because it's so easy to lose hope, etc. And I just think that you've got to look back and have no regrets about what decisions that you're making. And again, you don't have control over your IVF, so to speak, but you do have control of how you manage your stress, how you sleep, how you manage your emotions, how you strategize what you're doing, and you need that support to help you do that.
Sounds like I need a bit of that.
Okay, lifestyle and diet. We haven't got time to go into absolutely everything here, but what you eat does have a big impact on your eggs and your sperm and storing of your nutrients. So protein, fats, lower carbs, the Mediterranean diet, that has got the research to show that it really helps. And again, it's not all or nothing. For so many women, they find moderation really hard. So they've cut everything out. They're not going out. They're not seeing anybody. They're disconnected from everything. So it's encouraging them to, eat well, but try and sort of enjoy life as well and carry on socializing, because your relationships, not just with your partner, but with your family and your friends, are really important.
And balanced lifestyle.
Absolutely.
And is it the case of if it looks healthy, it is healthy? That looked delicious.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. It's not beige and boring, isn't it? So again, it's looking at supplements. I would never ever, I never encourage supplements over diet, but for for growing eggs and sperm, there are certain nutrients that you cannot get enough of from food. So ubiquinol, which is the mitochondria, it would take you 10 kilograms of broccoli you'd have to eat to get the equivalent of what's in a supplement, you know, and you'd have to eat loads of meat. So it's not about sort of just throwing a supplement for no reason. It's about substituting what is harder to get from your diet. And with IVF, you need lots of eggs, so you need extra of so many other things. So with a supplement, you know, certainly for the ones that we do, they need to be bioavailable, so they need to be absorbed easily into the body, research and everything that goes with it, good quality ingredients, etc. And they're, you know, it's hard for women. There are so many supplements and advice out there now. And I think I was telling you earlier that some of the advice, and when you're vulnerable on social media, is get pregnant in 2 months. And well, I can't resist these, so I did that quiz, get pregnant in 2 months. So
How did that work out?
it worked out really badly because I put my age in. I lied about my age. I said I was 48. They asked about my cycles. I said I didn't have any. How often were you having sex? Nil.
I did.
And guess what? Came back. I'm going to be pregnant in July. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah,
thank you. And again, it's the same with one yesterday. It's like at 44, you have 90. We'll get you pregnant. 94% chance. I mean, it's wrong. It's really wrong. But when you're vulnerable, you will do it.
You believe a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of I used to think with the celebrities who were in their mid to late 40s and they're getting pregnant, and there wasn't the whole story behind that. I used to think it was so unfair on the families that we look after, and think, God, they're seeing that. That's right out there in the press, and it gives hope, false hope, in my opinion, if eggs have been frozen or donor gametes have been used. I had a question for you just about this slide. I have patients asking me quite regularly, where do I get the nutrients from? Who should I talk to about this? Because they ask me, and I'm just quickly messaging you from Zita, what should I say to this? Or what I'm more often do is recommend them to come and see you. Who should they go and see?
Because we do a free 15-minute consultation for supplements. It's not a medical consultation. It's purely on what do I need to take for what. And that's great. It's done by our nutritionists. And there's no pushing to buy supplements or do anything like that. But it just gives you the advice that you need.
I'll give them a call.
Yeah. Okay, so these are just our fertility packs that you can see online. Frankie, were you going to sort of offer something?
Yeah, it's on the last.
Oh, it's on the last slide. Okay. And you know, we do a lot. I do a lot of live IGTVs. They're all free. Webinars we do. So you know, follow us. We've got a good Instagram page. And you know, stay up to date with us. I do consultations as well, which you're welcome to book with me. I do a 1-hour one by Zoom, and I do a 2-hour signature in person, 1-to-1, helping you with your mindset, where you are, where you need to be, what's going on medically for you, and just helping you sort of, you know, get through the maze of fertility. But I hope you've all enjoyed this evening. We certainly have, haven't we? I think it's been good.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Have a chat with you.
Yeah, and this is Rebecca, one of our nutritionists. We've got Isabel as well, and she will do a 15-minute consultation, and you can get in contact with me on Zita at zitawestconsultancy.com. Right.
We've had tons of amazing questions coming, so you've just said that we'll try.
My goodness.
Scroll through, try and pick some out.
So most NHS clinics referral from GP have a 50% waiting list. Wow.
Yeah.
And it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, the NHS does its best, but it's really hard. So you're faced with having to go private.
Yeah, I think that is your only option, or move
there are other ways of paying now, aren't there? There's, you know, lots of clinics. There's you can. It's almost like you can pay on a monthly basis, or is that right?
Yeah, there are different providers out there who can provide finance packages for you. I don't know enough about that, to be honest with you. We don't do that, but
okay.
I'm sure there is different information out there.
Okay, Rachel's question here. I've had 2 failed rounds and now going to a specialist clinic who is recommending Furiston. My AMH level was 9.8. Is there anything else that can help me?
Yeah, so duostim is essentially when your follicles reach a certain size, they're going to collect the eggs, but they're going to leave the smaller follicles behind and then start the stimulation again, the dual stim, to get those little ones to develop on little bit further. If that's what your clinic has advised for you, that there will certainly be a reason for it. It's not something we do regularly or have tremendous amounts of experience with, but on a individual basis, that can sometimes be the best way of collecting good numbers of eggs with using probably a slightly lower dosage of gonadotrophins.
I don't know how old Rachel is, but the AMH isn't bad at 9.8.
Yeah, she's 38.
Oh, 38.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not bad at 38.
No, that's really good.
Mm.
So you've got Hiral here, who's got an AMH of 6.6, and she's 36. So what you'd expect Hiral from, oh no, just ask me a few more questions about testosterone, but if you're 36, you expect a larger number of those eggs to be chromosomally healthy. So having a lower AMH won't impact on your chances of getting pregnant. All that affects is the number of eggs we're going to collect from you. Raised testosterone, how does that impact fertility and infertility or fertility? Is there anything you can do about that?
Well, raised testosterone sometimes comes when women are taking DHEA, which is a supplement to help with egg quality. And the thing about DHEA is, you know, you don't know whether it's going to convert to estrogen or testosterone. Right. And so if the testosterone is higher, the quality of eggs aren't going to be as good. So that might be a reason, but I don't know whether this is just naturally or whether she's taking a supplement. And there's another one here about estrogen levels for IVF success rate. Again, you know, estrogen helps to grow eggs, but when you're doing IVF, really, you're starting with a clean slate, aren't you? It's the drugs that you're given that are going to be doing the growth.
Yeah, I was a bit confused about that question. Is this the estrogen level once you're in stimulation? So as more follicles develop, your estrogen levels will increase because that's being produced from within the follicles. So the higher your estrogen, the more follicles you will have developing. Hopefully, the more eggs you will collect. So
again, the higher estrogen, you might develop into
HSS.
Yeah. Right. When you mention testing for chromosomal abnormalities, is PGT testing? My clinic are telling me I can't have this as an add-on, as I have NHS.
Oh, Carly, I'm sorry about that. That's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about pre-implantation genetic testing. Now, some PCTs, when they fund IVF, don't allow the clinics or where you are to add on anything else onto the treatment, which is what you're seeing there. Some the primary care trusts, or CCGs, they do allow it, but obviously in the area that you are, you're not having it. But to be honest with you, Carly, this really depends on how old you are, and the reason you would want to have PGT testing. It's not for everyone. If you're slightly younger, or when I say younger, kind of less than 38, it depends on the circumstances around your IVF treatment, but it may not actually be necessary.
I'm 42 with a good AMH. I assumed it was a numbers game and just about the right egg being selected. My clinic told me the issue with age is to do with secondary agenesis process when the chromosomes don't get split appropriately, causing chromosomal abnormalities. Is there anything I can do to optimize this if I have another IVF cycle?
No, what's being described there is a follicular development, egg development. And what the clinic is saying that before fertilization takes place at the meiosis stage, and now we go back to your primary school, probably not primary school, secondary school biology classes, is when the egg starts to separate out. It's 46 chromosomes, splitting them down into 26, because the other 26 come from 23. Sorry, oh my goodness. People, if my friends are on here, they'll be shocked that I've got the number of chromosomes wrong. But never mind, we'll quickly go over that. If your egg before fertilization takes place doesn't have 23 chromosomes within it, then you're going to end up with an abnormal egg. So this is the main cause for IVF failure, or even natural fertilization to fail, for spontaneous miscarriage to occur or fail to implantation. Is there anything you can do from a nutritional side?
Well, I was just saying, Genevieve, it would be really good if you got in contact with one of our nutritionists for a 15-minute consult, because I honestly think, again, with diet, with supplements, I don't know what supplements you're taking, but certainly like ubiquinol, not ubiquinone, ubiquinol is really, really good for the mitochondria. So it's a matter of 42 of ticking every box and not looking back and have any regrets. So I would get in contact with one of our nutritionists.
And then definitely, Genevieve, if you've had multiple cycles, then pre-implantation genetic testing, PGT, is something you should consider. If your AMH is good,
if your AMH is good,
you're in a very good place to do that.
Okay, I've just done this in Greece, and my period is 4 days late, so I'm worried.
PRP.
Oh, PRP. Sorry, I missed that one.
Take the rich plasma infection. They do it in Greece. I'm aware of that. We don't do that. Start again. We don't do it at Aria. There may be clinics in London that do PRP infusions. I'm not a pro on that, unfortunately. Are you?
No, I don't. I know that people do go to Greece to have it done, but I don't know how successful it is. Comparing myself to other AMI levels being mentioned here, I'm 37 and my AMH is 3.2. One ovary is sleepy, the other ovary has 2 follicles. Listening to this, it seems it might be quite a challenge I have ahead of me.
So Ashla's 37 with a AMH of 3.2. So what would that mean? Well, what's the sperm quality like? Do you have a partner, first of all?
Yeah.
If at that age, it depends how long you've been trying. If sperm quality is good, IUI, maybe even ovulation induction. If you've been recommended IVF, then you would expect maybe collect 4 or 5 eggs on a cycle. So maybe a few cycles of IVF to get a really good number will give you a good chance. Anything else you'd recommend there?
No, I think nutrition, what I said to the other lady, I think it's sort of looking at everything you can do to improve. Right, we're coming to the end of our questions now.
Oh, there's a few more down here.
Let's have a look.
Got that one from Kimberly Wade. On a recent round of IVF ICSI, we had 15 fertilized embryos, but only 1 has made it to the blastocyst stage. Would it be a normal assumption that this would be down to egg quality? Yeah, not at all, Kimberly. So we would like to look at the early development of the embryos between day 2 and 3. What were the quality of those embryos like then? What happened after day 3 when the paternal genome activated, and then the development of the embryos continued then on? If that was poor, it could be more an indication of egg quality, but that's something to really discuss with your doctors.
Monica's just here. So improve the egg quality before you start IVF rounds. Yeah, absolutely. You know, again, the longer the better. If you've got 6 to 8 weeks, I think that's a really good thing to do. And I think for some women, like I said earlier, they keep at it. And in a way, you need to sometimes have a break and look at all the other things that you've done. But we're coming to the end now of our time. Thank you so much for listening to us. I hope that this has helped in some way, and this will be sent out, won't it? So best of luck to all of you.